listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday.
Tony Alford's here with me today, and also we're talking to my good friend Russ Latino. I got to meet him when we went to Israel in November, and that trip really throws you together for a week of very intense trips. He's a fellow journalist. He's got an online newspaper called the Magnolia Tribune, and I won't hold it against you that you're a big Ole Miss fan and you wore Ole Miss stuff every darn day while we were in Israel. How are you, Russ?
Doing well. It's great to hear your voice, and I will apologize for mine. I yelled a little bit too much at the Sugar Bowl. So, if nothing else, you can hold it. You can hold it that I actually injured myself while cheering for the Rebels.
Yeah, and I tell you what, honestly, you know, the SEC's had a tough time in this bowl season compared to what they usually do, and so I'll be rooting for Ole Miss from here on out. But and I just said at the beginning of the game, because the game that we played against them earlier in the season, y'all should have won that game earlier in the season. It was just luck at the end, and you guys had luck at the end this time because it was a very closely matched game.
It was a chaotic game, and I left the stadium and I told my wife, I said, if we played them 10 times, I really think Georgia would win 5 and Ole Miss would win 5. They were really evenly matched, and Georgia put on a great show, great team, obviously. But yeah, we're recovering from it.
Well, and I tell you, I said to my husband, I said, if we win this game, it's going to be because of those 3 pass interferences in a row y'all had. Because right at the end there, when we could have scored one more time, everybody started making mistakes. They were tired, and there were like 3 of those pass interference calls in a row, and that helps you. But we weren't able to maximize it, and then we ended up doing a safety at the end, so it was kind of ridiculous anyway. But congratulations.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, before we get to your Tucker Carlson piece that you wrote, I want to talk to you a little bit about our trip, because what I'm finding is that I'm still thinking about new things that I learned. And I've had a great opportunity to talk to different people. I've got Miri Eisen on later on in the week, and I've talked to Jonathan, and I've talked to different folks. And I'm going to get around to all of everybody, because I think that I'm still learning what I learned on that trip.
Yeah, no, it was intense, right? I mean, just the level of movement that we had to start with, right? The different places that we visited and learned about, and then also just the number of people that we spoke to. And, the human brain can only contemplate so much at once. And I think we were going 14 to 16-hour days. I'm like you. I'm still, relearning some of the things that we encountered. And truthfully, because of some of the things that we're encountering, I'm learning new stuff. I'm actively seeking out information. But it was a once-in-a-lifetime trip. I mean, my sense is there are 2 sides of it, right? There's the side of it that is, I got to see biblical places that I have learned about my whole life and feel my faith in a much more tangible way. And that's sort of the historical side. And then there was the side of it that I got to learn so much about the dynamics there. And I think there's just so much that Americans don't understand about Israel and the Middle East and what comprises that conflict that really I kind of feel almost required at this point, at least in my small circle, to share with people.
Yeah, and there was some news about that temple that's being excavated in Magdala recently, and it was so exciting that as I read the story, I knew what they were talking about, and that was great. And then for me, how people got along. I mean, you think that there's all these factions in Israel, and maybe there are. And obviously, there's if people were willing to talk to us, they were more open-minded about certain things. But at the same time, there were all different kinds of people, Bedouins and Muslims and Palestinians and Israelis and Jews. And it seemed like people got along pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I was also surprised by that. I was surprised by how resilient that population is. Because in a lot of ways I expected the people there to be hardened because they faced such atrocity and war and constant threat. But they were incredibly, incredibly warm. I know we had dinner at the former ambassador's house for Shabbat dinner, and his wife hugged me on the way out, which was kind of unexpected. But we also ran into, school children who wanted to say hello and talk to us. And I think the other thing that people maybe don't realize, they think of Israel as an ethno-state, right, that this is a Jewish state. And certainly there is an element of this being a Jewish state. But you also have over 20% of the population there that is not Jewish, right? A huge Arab and Muslim population, a smaller Christian population, and they all find ways to coexist. Like, we walked around Jerusalem, obviously from quarter to quarter, where it's supposed to be, hey, here's the Christian quarter and here's the Muslim quarter. I never felt like there were any dividing lines, right? And so I do think that part was a little shocking, because I expected a level of hostility that we just didn't encounter.
And the level of hope that people have. Even when you got every bus stop with a bomb shelter and you got every house with a safe house, the people were incredibly positive and hopeful.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, I agree, 100%.
So, I also wanted to talk to you about your column that you wrote about Tucker Carlson. And, I worked for Tucker for a period of time at the beginning of the Daily Caller. I've always found him to be very gracious as far as dealing with me individually and the work that I do. Haven't talked to him lately because he's a little harder to get these days. But you wrote a column saying Tucker Carlson's jihadi apology tour is despicable. Tell me what led you to write this, and then just your thoughts about it.
Yeah, and I'm like you in that I used to very much enjoy listening to Tucker Carlson. I thought he was sort of a fresh breath, that was willing to question things in a way that required you to think a little bit harder. I think there's a difference between questioning things and openly sort of platforming anti-Semites and openly driving narratives that are false to try and hurt the relationship between Israel and the United States. And I really believe that's what he's doing at this point. If you were to look at his program, the number of times that he mentions derisively Israel is almost every single program. If you were to listen to his speeches right now, you'd hear a lot of dog whistles. He talks about the financiers that are controlling our country, which, dates back to the early 1900s, late 1800s, when that sort of same rhetoric was used against the Jewish population, the idea that they're all bankers that are, sort of greedily controlling people. And then you look at the platforming of Nick Fuentes, who is, for those who are listening who don't know, is like sort of the leader of the anti-Semitic movement in the United States, particularly amongst young people, a guy who jokes about baking human beings like cookies, which is kind of what he's known for. He's a Holocaust denier. And he has said that Hitler was awesome. Well, Tucker not only allows him onto his program under the guise of, hey, I just want to promote free speech. Now, Martha, I don't think you would allow a Holocaust denier on your program, and I think you do believe in free speech. There's a difference between that and, literally platforming somebody to millions of people. But then once he's on the program, he doesn't ask a single hard question. He doesn't ask anything about Fuentes' beliefs around the Jewish population, what should happen to the Jewish population, his anti-Semitism, his Holocaust denying, none of that. To take it one step further, in addition to platforming people like that, he is now going around saying that radical Islam is not a threat to the United States. And he said that he hadn't met anyone in the last 24 years in the United States that was a victim of radical Islam. That's a really cute window to focus on, because if you went back 25 years, there's that thing called 9/11 where 3,000 Americans died. But the other part of that is it's just false. Right? I was just in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. They had a memorial up for the 14 people who died last New Year's at the hands of radical Islam. We just had 2 National Guardsmen who were shot at the hands of radical Islam. We've had Jewish people burned alive in Colorado this year. We had another couple outside of the embassy in D.C. that were killed. There are dozens and dozens of instances of radical Islam in the United States hurting people right now. But he so despises the relationship between the United States and Israel that he wants to downplay the threat that is to Israel, which is radical Islam, and candidly downplay that threat to the United States security interest.
And radical Islam, it takes many forms, right? They use our freedom of religion against us. There are imams in Detroit and in other cities that are calling for the takeover of our government, and that we're gonna get big enough that we can take over the country, and that's, to me, that's using our freedom of religion against us. That's not what freedom of religion was designed for. It was so that you could worship in the way you want to worship, not, plan a takeover of the country you live in.
Yeah, we're not a theocracy, right? And so, I think there's this fine line when we talk about like immigration and what that looks like in the United States, where like you can recognize immigration as a net positive or has been in the United States, but generally that happens when there's assimilation, where people adopt our values, like the things that make us uniquely American. And what is being promoted in communities like in Dearborn is not assimilation, it's theocratic takeover. And so, I think that's something to be legitimately concerned about. And to have someone in the conservative movement that has the kind of credibility and platform that he has, openly suggesting that radical Islam is not a problem, really, I think, driven by his hatred of Israel, is really problematic.
And you're right about the cherry-picking language that he says he hasn't met anyone in the last 24 years. Well, it's because there's dozens of people, maybe hundreds, that are dead. You're not going to meet the dead people, and that's just what's so crazy. But anyway, Russ Latino, how can people take a look at your work?
Yeah, so you can go to magnoliatribune.com. I actually have an article up today on the situation in Venezuela. Or you can listen if you want to listen to Mississippi Public Broadcasting. I have a weekly show every Wednesday.
Great. That's so great. It's good to see you. I hope I'll see you again soon.
Yep. Thank you,
Martha. Are you going to the national championship if they go?
So we are flying out to Phoenix for the Fiesta Bowl. I haven't decided whether or not I can bite the bullet on the national championship. Those tickets are relatively expensive.
Yeah, I get it. Russ Latino, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me right now is Grover Norquist, who is really the most important person in conservative fiscal policy and politics. I've known Grover for years, and we've got some big things that have happened. I mean, obviously, January 3rd and what happened in Venezuela is a huge thing because it is really what I have been talking about for years, where we're starting to take back our concern about our own hemisphere first, and then moving on from there. But the other thing that happened big on January 1st was all these implementations and rolling out of the things from the big, beautiful bill. And we're going to start seeing the benefit of that in our paychecks and in other things that we do. And so I wanted to have him on to just kind of update the things we've talked about before. Grover, welcome back to the program.
Absolutely. Good to be with you.
Thank you. So just give people kind of a rundown of the kinds of things they're going to see now that the tenets of the big, beautiful bill are going to in effect.
Well, one of the exciting things is much of the big, beautiful bill, even though the legislation wasn't passed until July, 6 months into Trump's term, all of the pieces of it, almost all the pieces of it, took effect in the beginning of January, a year ago. So when you hear that the rates, the per-child tax credit went up, that wasn't just for part of the year. That's not for next year. That was for this year. And when you saw the standard deduction go up, that I guess we should not talk about it last year, meaning 2025. So there are a lot of Americans who are going to get much larger refund checks than they expected because all year the per-child tax credit has been higher. All year there is no tax on tips for the first $25,000. All year there's been a reduction in the tax on Social Security. All year your rates, which were going to go back down under the Democrats' plan if they'd won the
go up,
the vote in the
go
House
up.
and the Senate,
yeah,
everyone's tax rate would have gone up. What we missed, what we dodged, when the Republicans won the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and made the tax cuts permanent, was a $4 trillion tax increase this 10 years, and then the next 10 years, and then the next 10 years. $4 trillion. $400 billion a year, and then it would increase with inflation and everything else. We dodged permanently, not for a few years, permanently, one of the largest tax increases in every single Democrat in the House, and the Senate voted for a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people this decade. That's the biggest thing that we missed. But tax rates are lower. For businesses, you can expense when you buy new cars for employees, when you buy new computers, new trucks for moving things, when you build a new factory, you expense that. Meaning if you spend $1 million making your employees more productive, you don't pay income taxes on the $1 million. Why? Among other things, you don't have it anymore. You just spent it. But in the old days, under the Democrats, you actually paid taxes and were penalized on the very investments you were making to make your workers more productive so that they can create more wealth, so that they can get bigger pay increases, and so you can have new and better products and services in the world. We used to tax that and penalize it. Now we say, you know what, you want to spend it? We're not going to tax it. You just built a factory. We're not taxing you with those dollars. Now, when you make a whole bunch of money down the road, there's a corporate income tax, but not on the investment to make workers more productive.
Now, some states just said they weren't going to implement the no tax on tips. New York was one of those, and they got such an uproar that they had to back down from that. But if you look at the list of states that said they weren't going to do it, well, they were all blue states. And I don't understand that. You know, you can disagree with Trump as they do, but once it's the law, you should do it, and you'll get the benefit from it as the Democratic governor. But no, they want to make their people suffer.
It's actually more evil than that. The reason why the Democrats are run by the labor unions and the trial lawyers. The Democratic Party is run by, they're not allowed to do anything that bothers the labor union bosses, and they're not allowed to do anything that bothers the billionaire trial lawyers. Then after that, they can do weird stuff and annoy students and chop off their private parts in school. But that's additional to the requirement that you do what the unions and the trial lawyers want. What do unions want? They do not like tips. You see them city to city go to ban tips and pass a law that says everybody has to be paid the same. Well, bartenders know that not all bartenders are the same. Some do a really good job, and some sit and listen to your problems in life, and some waitresses and waiters get things there quicker and faster and better, and they get bigger tips. But if you can't unionize a workplace where harder working people get paid more.
Yeah.
Because unions, everything has to be the same. You have to say everybody gets paid as much as the lousiest worker in the plant. And then everybody works to that. And that's why all of the growing states are right-to-work states, and the non-growing states are non-right-to-work states.
Yeah,
Jobs and pay are increasing.
And my daughter for 5 years was a server because she was in the arts, and it was a great job to do because it was flexible, and you could go to auditions and you could do all the things you needed to do, but you could still make money. And one of the things she did because she hustled was that she would work all the Georgia football games, even though she liked football. She knew she could make a lot of tips if she worked the Georgia football games. And there were times, Grover, where she'd make $500 or $600 in a night for a Georgia football game. And she was doing that at the time when they started instituting the tax on tips, where a lot of states started doing that, where they started making you claim them and all that kind of stuff. And, I got to see firsthand how that impacted the amount of money that she had to be able to deal with. Now she's moved on. She's doing different things and all of that. But I'm a very good tipper because of that experience of having my daughter have to make her living, waiting tables and being in the service industry.
Yeah, and it's not just waiters and waitresses. It's Uber drivers. It's the people who DoorDash. It's the people who bring stuff to you from the grocery store. Maybe more 10, 13 million Americans.
Yes.
Get paid on tips. And they see immediate good work immediately rewarded. And that the unions can't stand. And that's why the Democrats hate no tax on tips, because they hate tips. And they hate people getting paid based on how hard they work and how well they please customers. And what's the role of the union in that? Well, there isn't one, Buster. Get out of here. They don't need to hear that. So that's what they think that tipped economies are difficult to force people to join unions. This is true. And therefore, they want to literally ban them.
Yeah. I tell you, it's interesting with what happened because we booked this interview before what happened in Venezuela, but it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out because you have groups of people that were all for this until Donald Trump did it. And I think that how you know this is a really good thing that happened is, I don't know if you saw the message that Jeb Bush put out there, but Jeb said, hey, this is the right thing to do. And he was very supportive. And, the Bushes have no love lost with Donald Trump, right? So I think it showed some intellectual honesty. And that's all I'm asking for, Grover. I am asking for intellectual honesty, that if you were for something when Donald Trump wasn't president, you should be for it. And you don't have to be for everything he does, but you should be for it when he does the right thing that fits into your values. But they're twisting themselves up so much to try to make it sound like, if this is somehow they're for drug traffickers now. And I think it's a crazy thing.
The decision to remove a dictator who wasn't elected, who is working on behalf of, with the support of the Soviet Union, Russia, Cuba, which is a colony of Russia, and China, which is also in the game, and Iran. All of these countries use Venezuela as a base for going after other democracies in Latin America to try and undermine them. Colombia, Brazil. They just lost in Chile. The communists lost in Chile. It's a 58% vote for the free market, Reagan Republican candidate in Chile against the communist, a real communist, not just idiot. And a big win also in Argentina. Latin America, a free market Latin America, one doesn't have people by the millions coming to the United States because they're trapped in poverty and they can't make it anywhere else. They can't get anything in Latin America. They come to the United States. So it's the idea of taking seriously getting the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians out of running colonies in here, the Monroe Doctrine, is an important one. I do think that ending the dictatorship, restoring a free market in Venezuela, which used to be one of the richest countries in the world. So did Argentina. Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world until the labor unions took it over, the Peronists, who were basically ran things through the labor union structure. It drove it into the dirt, and it went bankrupt repeatedly. Now it's back on path to get better. Venezuela has more oil than something like any other country in the world. It's a ridiculous number. And how do you screw that up? Well, you run the country as a socialist country. That's how you mess it up.
That's how you screw it up. Grover Norquist, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good to be with you.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
I went to Israel in November. That's where I met my next guest, Miri Eisen. She is a retired colonel in the IDF and was one of the most competent women I've ever talked to in my life, and competent people. And I felt so hopeful when I left that trip because the things I learned there, and I'd always been a supporter of Israel. I mean, it was just kind of in my DNA, but after going there for the first time and seeing how people of all different backgrounds work together and the hopefulness they have about the life they're forging, it made me feel good about the future, even though I know there's a lot of challenges ahead. Miri Eisen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's so lovely to be talking into Georgia right now.
That's right. So tell folks just a little bit about you. I mean, I said that you had been in the IDF, but that's not all there is about you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I am one of those, I don't want to say an army brat, and you can hear my American accent, but my parents immigrated to Israel when I was a kid, and I served in the Israeli Defense Forces in a variety of positions. almost entirely inside Israeli military intelligence. For those people out there who know a bit more of the military, I was an S2 of a brigade, the G2 of Israel's airborne division, and a variety of different positions inside Israeli intelligence. And after I retired at the rank of colonel, I also served for 2 years in the Israeli Prime Minister's office as the international media advisor. And what can I say, Martha? That was before social media, before, in that sense, smartphones. So once upon a time, people used to watch TV and listen to the radio a lot more.
And talk to each other.
That's another aspect to it. We could add that in as well.
That's
and
right.
for a very long time, that's right. So I teach, I lecture, I do a lot of briefings, and I'm basically a researcher on our geopolitical regional issues here in the Middle East.
And there are many, right? You've got Israel, which what struck me is, you see on a map how small it is, but it's really small. And we, in our trip, covered the border that we looked over with you, as well as several others. And but even since we went in November, there have been huge changes. So give us an update on how the ceasefire's going, as well as, your thoughts about what's happening in Iran right now.
Absolutely. So when we say ceasefire, we're talking about a few different ceasefires. Israel has one line with the Gaza Strip after all of the last 2 years and 4 months, and that ceasefire that was done with the absolute help of President Trump and of this administration brought about the return to Israel of the live hostages and of most of the dead hostages. There still is one Israeli dead hostage that was taken on murdered and taken on October 7th, 2023, who's still held by Hamas. When we talk about the South right now, when we talk about that area, there's no question that it's got to be pretty hard for people, not pretty hard, it's hard for people inside the Gaza Strip, but Hamas still rules. Hamas has not given up its weapons. In the areas that Israel is not deployed in, Hamas is trying to reassert its claim. And what's supposed to happen now is that under an American auspice, okay, meaning they're kind of like an American umbrella, the United States has established an international force. It's called the International Stabilizing Force that's supposed to go into the areas where Hamas controls. Because at the end of the day, I think we're all going to agree, none of us want Hamas. This isn't about the Palestinian people, and they have a very poor future with Hamas with them. And that's just one of the borders. But we also have the ceasefire with Hezbollah. And the ceasefire with Hezbollah is a Shiite, Arabic-speaking Lebanese organization, a lot of words there. And Hezbollah in Lebanon was heavily attacked, and I would even say decimated by Israel in 2024. And we now are at the beginning of 2026. So a few things. One, Hezbollah has not attacked Israel a single time since November 27th, but what they're trying to do is to recuperate. The Islamic regime of Iran that you mentioned is trying to rearm them, but there's a whole new arena. The new Syrian regime under Ahmed al-Shara, who was hosted by the president in the United States in November of this year, colorful figure that we could talk about for a while. But one of the things that he is doing right now is he is not allowing the Islamic regime of Iran to use Syria as the conduit for weapons to Hezbollah. That is a huge change in the Middle East. And just yesterday in Paris, and this is also these new first things, there was a meeting between Israeli high-ranking people and Syrian high-ranking people, including the Syrian foreign minister. And that is unheard of. And that was also done under the auspices of the United States in Paris. And that means that for Israel on the northern border, we're in some kind of negotiations with Syria to try to arrive at some kind of a resolution on that border. And inside Lebanon, albeit Hezbollah is totally trying to get back their weapons, to get back their strength, to go back to being the one that defines what happens inside Lebanon, because of the new regime in Syria and because of the new regime in Lebanon, we're really seeing some changes on the ground. And I talked way too much.
No, you didn't. You didn't. What I'm looking at in Iran, because ironically, I have an uncle who's passed away now, but he was... he used to always say he was Persian, okay? And he was actually Armenian Persian. And he and his family left Iran during the Armenian genocide and went to India from there. And from India, he came to be educated in the United States, and that's where he met my aunt, got married, and that's where I had this little part of my life, where I would hear about these kinds of things. And it was always interesting to me because I meet a lot of people that are Iranian, but they will always refer to themselves as being Persian. And I see this, and talked about a lot. But today what we're seeing is, or at least if you can believe what you're viewing on video, which is I always have to check and double check and triple check these days. But it looks like there are protests in the streets and that the police, by and large, are letting them happen in Iran. And is that significant, or is it just something we're going to have to wait out?
So the first thing is that it's significant, and we're going to have to wait it out. So let's for a moment just put this into perspective. So I'm sitting right now in Tel Aviv, in Israel, not far from the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, I live only a few miles from the Mediterranean Sea. From me, meaning in Tel Aviv, to get to Iran, I could get into a car and drive. It would take me a long time, but I want people to understand that it's a land, meaning you would drive from Israel to Jordan, from Jordan to Iraq, cross Iraq, you're in Iran. That's the neighborhood that I live in. I just said something that would take a good, and when I say that, you know what, it would take 17 or 18 hours, and you're in Georgia, and think if you would drive right now west, how far you'd get if you drove 18 hours. I mean, at the end, you'd still be in the nice south of the United States of America. So,
well, it's about 14. It's about 14 hours to drive from Atlanta to where my grandmother lived in New York. So it's
all right.
Yeah, we drive. We drive. Yeah.
We drive. So here in the Middle East, we don't drive so much because we have a lot of countries that are at war with each other, or like countries that call for our destruction. And so we have an open border to a certain degree, but we have very challenging aspects. And inside Iran, you're talking about a country of over 90 million people. And in the Middle East, that's very dominant. The two largest, most populated countries in the greater Middle East are not the Arabic-speaking ones. We're talking about Iran, 90 million, Turkey, 90 million, and both of them do not speak Arabic. Iran is Persian, and Turkey is Turkish, and those are different languages, and it's not just a language, it's a culture, and it's different languages and cultures. And in Iran, you had a very developed Persian culture. It's a very ancient culture, and people that were both Muslim, both Sunni and Shiite, because there's a Shiite majority there, but also, like you said, of your uncle, Armenian. There are other religions inside Iran, and what always united all of them is that they were very proud of being Persian, of what Persian culture has brought to the world, in poetry and in a lot of different aspects of science. They were very important, the Persians, in the world. And in this odd way, until 1979, the country, Persia, Iran, had a very strong relationship with all of the West. And in the post-revolution period that happened there, when you had people who were trying to go towards democracy, and it was kind of hijacked by the Islamic regime, but at the end of the day, the bulk of Persians are Muslim Shiites. And what we're seeing right now are Persians, people who live there, who are saying enough is enough. Right now inside Iran, okay, we're in 2026. You can barely get electricity. It's a country of 90 million people. It's a modern country. They don't have the water. They are in a horrific water crisis. And the money of the regime goes in for weapons to attack Israel, to supply Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other proxies. And the people in Iran are saying it. They're saying it in their voice. No to Hezbollah, no to Gaza, because those are the two things that Iran likes to say that they're supporting. And yes to us, invest in us inside Iran. So it is an actual, real movement. Islamic dictatorships are not nice. I'm being very cute right now. They're not going to do nice things to the people who are against them. And it isn't that everybody is against the regime. There's definitely popular support in portions of Iran, but we are seeing all over. It's already in over 50 different cities, including in Tehran, the capital, and other cities. I don't see it as much in the very, what I would call, religious-based cities, but in all of the other areas in and around Iran. And that may bring about a change, but as you said at the beginning, it's dramatic, but I don't expect it to happen quickly.
Yes. So I ask everyone that I speak to from Israel where they were on October 7th and what that day was like for them.
I woke up from the siren at home Saturday, Tel Aviv, with my husband, who is also a retired colonel, and 2 out of my 3 kids. All of them serve in the military, all 3 of my kids. By the siren, I would say that within 1 hour, I was in my empty house. My husband was doing reserve duty as a colonel for a very long time throughout 2023 and 2024. Daughter, officer, captain in an Israel infantry brigade, Golani, that had horrible, horrible casualties both on October 7th and afterwards. She was often there. My youngest also. I'm just staying in my own. Everybody was in the military, and I feel like pretty much from October 7th, I sat in front of a screen, talked to every single TV outlet in the world, which is a lot of what I do in that sense, just of trying in some way to convey who we are and what's going on here. And our life has completely changed since then in Israel. And yet here we are. We're still within the 10 countries that have the people who consider themselves happy because we like it here. It's a wonderful country with a lot of warts, pimples, challenges, and problems, but I'd rather be here than anywhere else.
Well, I'm a Christian, and I wore from October 7th and still wear today. I wear a different one today because I gave away the one that I wore for 2 years when I was in Israel. But I wore a Star of David with a cross in it, and that was
That's amazing.
My small way of supporting. I'm 66 years old. I can't go to war, but I can show my support and do what I can do. And when we went to the Nova Festival site, we spoke to the Bedouin police officer who saved hundreds of people from that site. And I felt I was waiting for the moment to say, who should I give this to? And he was the one. So I gave him that and told him the story behind it. And it was such a moving moment. It was the only place we were during that time that we heard rocket fire, too, which was very interesting, or not surprising, really. But the final thing is we went to visit a kibbutz not far from after we saw you, and I remember walking down from the dining hall when we had eaten, and they had all the pictures of the families that lived there in that kibbutz, and it's on the border with Syria, this particular one. And I thought to myself, this could have easily have been this kibbutz. This could have as easily been these families. And that was one of the most poignant moments of my visit.
When you describe that, as you describe it right now, that's what I call the challenge of people who look at Israel in what I'm going to call one-dimensional eyes. On October 7th, and I'm saying this very clearly, we as the military, as the intelligence, as the security establishment, and I say as myself as part of that, we feel that we absolutely failed. And what happened from October 7th and onward is not just a question of getting up, continuing to be here, continuing to fight, but an understanding that those enemies like Hamas that attacked on October 7th, Hezbollah could have attacked. To this day, we're never going to know why they didn't, but they did attack us from the air. They just didn't attack us with ground forces the way that Nukhba Hamas did on October 7th. And there was the possibility that this could happen from Syria. Syria is an unstable country that's trying to stabilize it right now, and I think it's great for the Syrian future for it to be stabilized, but I do not want to help establish a country that's going to turn into a Taliban country. Yeah. And we live in between those because when you're up on the Golan Heights, that's part of the challenge.
So many things. Miri Eisen, thank you so much, and when my husband and I come back, we're going to look you up.
Martha, I can't wait to host you at my Shabbat dinner. Thank you so much.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.